Clicker. That's right. Your internet's #1 Cookie Clicker podcast.
And that's just one of those like goofy YouTube videos where somebody just clicks a cookie for 10 minutes until you get 1,000,000 cookies.
No.
Try to think of the deeper game.
Yeah. So
the subtext.
In this podcast, we explore strategies, tips, techniques for Cookie Clicker, and really just exploring that game space.
Well, and also, when you follow the forum, you want to talk more about Cookie Clicker inclusion, Cookie Clicker agency.
Right.
It's important that
we don't just minimize Cookie Clicker to just clicking cookies. There's so much more to it than that.
Right.
Here we can see, this is me, right now I'm clicking the cookies.
That's right. I see you've got a modest, slightly over 500 billion cookies.
Right, well this is not a very old run. So right now, we're clicking the cookies. Okay, and now I'm just going to go over here, and we're going to buy some upgrades. We're going to get 10 more grandmas, which gives us a slight boost to our cookies per second. Alright, here we go.
CPS for short.
CPS, that's what I wanted it to be approachable.
Right, yeah. For the sake of transparency.
No, it's good. It's doing really good.
Now, there's also the magical subgame.
There's some magic we can be doing here. But unfortunately, recently I did click to create a random cookie. And as you can see, that random cookie has drained my mana pool for a time. Now, I could use a sugar lump to refresh my mana pool.
Right.
But with the number of cookies I have, this spends a whole cookie to refresh 100 units.
Right.
And I only have 35. So I'm just going to have to wait. And, of course, these refresh, as you know, of course, being fans of Cookie Clicker.
Pretty slow. Pretty slow.
0.02 per second.
It sounds like a lot, but that's a lot of ticks to get to 15 seconds.
It is. As you see, we just got to 13. We could do this one again, making all upgrades cheaper.
Right, but during, for example, when you hit a cookie frenzy, being able to double down, cast a spell so you can get square cookies.
Right.
That can be the sort of edge you need to make it onto the leaderboards. And let's talk about the leaderboards for a moment.
So we were looking at speed runs. And let's go back and look at that. Now, if we go to speedrun.com, we can see that the fastest person to a 1 million cookie run is Mark2427. And he got to 1 million cookies in just 7 minutes and 49 seconds.
And I think that's, intimidating as that is, it shows that it is an approachable amount of time.
Yeah.
It's, you're talking about speed runs, looking at the top 20 minutes or less.
Yeah. No, I think given that we have less than a minute left in talking about cookies, let's just take a moment to really enjoy this speed run here. So let's just watch some high level tutorial. This is high level play right here.
Right.
Here we go.
Now there's basically no audio in this video.
He's not talking, so we're gonna have to fill that air.
Right. This is just a.
Here we go.
They bought the cursor.
Yeah.
Which is pretty important. They're clicking cookies.
But you notice he's not buying upgrades. He's just going for the straight cookie play here.
Yeah.
See, he's got a speed speedometer right there on the bottom left. I'm not sure if you can see it with our faces there. But this is a professional Cookie Clicker player playing Cookie Clicker at a really high level. And over the course of the video, you'll see about 7 minutes, 50 seconds of him clicking the cookies. I don't want to spoil it by skipping ahead, but let me just tell you, what he does at the 7-minute mark is going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
However, that's going to do it for talking about Cookie Clicker today. As always, I'm your host, Brian Murphy, and this is Bucky Avramovsky, and we're just telling all of you, keep clicking those cookies.
Keep clicking those cookies.
All right. You think all the Cookie Clicker players are gone? Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Talking About Werewolves. This is our other podcast.
I told him we shouldn't cross the streams, but I'm curious as to what comments we were ignoring for the whole time.
They seem pretty into it. Some people ask if we were seriously playing Cookie Clicker. I would have you not judge our other podcast.
Did you see the amount of cookies that this man's bakery was clicking out?
It wasn't speedrun quality.
We weren't doing a speedrun. I think you're going for most cookies.
Over time.
You want to get to trillions.
Yeah, you really got to enjoy that delta. Yeah. At any rate, welcome to Talking About Werewolves. As some of you may have noticed, Iggy is not here again. We're sure he'll be back soon.
Should we address that at all? Or?
Let's keep not.
Okay. Yeah. All right. He hasn't been playing much. So, there's less to talk about.
So, today, I think we're really going not auto clickers are no. Hang on a sec. I was going to transition to Werewolf, but this is a serious discussion.
No botting. I don't care what game it is. I don't care if it's
I'm not
Cookie
going to
Clicker
auto clicker
or Diablo 3 or you know what? Don't fudge your gnosis and health levels in Werewolf. I know it can be tempting because you got to be your own police officer.
Yes, he's in a hurry. He's not checking your willpower.
Yeah.
And that's the same as using an auto clicker.
Absolutely.
Disgusting.
Cheating is cheating.
Just
you're
disgusting.
The only player you're really cheating
Is yourself.
Yeah.
So today we're really going to focus more on a Q&A, sort of a back and forth with you guys. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, I see. Some of it you little skullduggerous bastards are being quiet about, so it's hard for me to talk about unless you would bring it up first.
I don't have to think about living in a world where there are things I can't discuss being on the board of directors because I wasn't elected.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, on docking that. That was pretty good.
That's good. I mean, but you showed your devotion by making the run. And it went to 7 ballots, so it might be...
It did go to 7 ballots. I will say that it was... I couldn't even be salty about it when I looked at the raw numbers of people who voted for members of the board of directors, and that number was 7 players less than people who voted on the Ferra inclusion fictional vote in APOC.
Which is only the Geru players.
Which is only the Geru players.
In one genre.
In one genre.
So
eclipsed the total MES wide voting by 7.
Guys.
So I couldn't. I was like, I can't even be mad though. I can't even be mad.
I'd mentioned the Doomsday Clock. Well, I talk about the Doomsday Clock a lot. So if you have any questions about the Doomsday Clock, we will address those with you. But yes, once again, Kron's son of Krod. Iggy is not here tonight. Iggy is on a bit of a sabbatical. He may rejoin us at some point, or he may pick up a new third, but...
I would like to have more guests, but we have Sunday issues. The guest we keep trying to bring to the show usually is locked up tonight. This is also on various weekends when people are driving back from weekends of DR. So we're in competition with a lot of time. Also families. A lot of people these days have families.
So while we gab back and forth a little bit with you guys, if anybody's got any questions, please throw them out there and we will go about them. Did Iggy rage quit over BOD drama? No. I can firmly say that Iggy did not rage. No. His rage quit was long before that.
It wasn't really a rage quit.
No, it wasn't.
And it was just... I don't want to put words in Iggy's mouth. It's nothing he wouldn't tell you himself. He's just not really playing Werewolf anymore. So being on a show talking about Werewolves, it's a little bit. Still has an interesting Sabat tune. Hopefully we'll see more of. But it really depends on how the games are scheduled. Right now we're looking at doing double header nights once a month. So there's a lot up in the air locally. These are more local things than... national drama.
Yeah, the weird thing about Buffalo is that because of our location, we're always weirdly isolated from the rest of whatever org we're in.
Right.
Like, we end up spending more time with the Canadians, who, are a fairly mellow bunch.
We're very much an independent murder island.
Yeah.
An anti-Galapagos.
There was a note here, we got here, you talked about Accord having been granular and trying to work with what you had, but the clock was ambiguous. Oh, so this was a question that was raised earlier today about why we don't publish the delta on the clock by individual game or give the modifiers for the individual levels on the clock. Like, do this minus 4 seconds, do this minus 1 second. And the reason for that is, one, to avoid people gaming the system. Which is obvious because the clock isn't supposed to represent every possible thing a Geru or a Gaian should be doing. But instead it tries to snapshot a few of those things which we think are good metrics for the Geru not sucking. But if players just knew what those things were and then just were able to go for them, then we're not really snapshotting a portion of Geru activity. We're, gaming it. Which weirdly in this situation is not advantageous. But no, the clock was inspired by Reality Quotient in Accord.
Yeah,
but
it's a similar conceit. I mean, which was also just the real life conceit of the Doomsday Clock and how close we are to nuclear Armageddon.
Right.
I mean, let's give a little credit where it's due.
But the basic idea was
to the non-gaming related clocks about the end of the world.
But applying it to a game definitely came from the Reality Quotient in Accord.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just we kind of pulled back from what Accord did. I think they had some really great ideas, but I didn't think it. I thought it could be improved, and I think a general clock, as opposed to the individual level clock where games are micromanaging their RQs all the time. Me personally, I didn't think that sub game was super fun, although I think it did work for Accord. But I think for Apocalypse's purposes, having the Apocalypse as one big thing as opposed to many individual little things was dramatically more interesting.
Yeah. RQ at the local level really just became what sort of PCs the new person could roll up. There was a lot of that. It was like, well, we don't want to have to deal with this, so make a mortal. Or do something to lower RQ, or don't roll in as whatever.
Yeah. And this is the other thing I did love about Accord, and I'm looking forward to in space, is the ability of these custom genres to kind of go a little weird and experiment with the form. I mean, even though we do experiment like crazy in APOC, we have to be APOC at the end of the day.
Right.
Which does stop us from getting a little too out there.
I think innovation is important. It keeps games fresh, but it's also important from sort of an artistic and just other viewpoints about what gaming actually is, what LARPing is, what we're actually doing on our weekends and whatnot. And part of communal storytelling is something like the clock, which is a communal representation of that. And I guess, you know, you never know what's going to be what's going to influence things like that. Like right now, people are talking about sort of a revival of 2D art and 2D gaming based on the overwhelming success of Cuphead. And you have a lot from this is going to sound weird, but in some of the art circles that I'm bizarrely part of, with animators and 2D artists and things like that, they are really happy to see sort of what could potentially kick off like a renaissance of their art form, which has long been considered.
Well, cell animation was assumed to be dead. I mean, nobody's making those movies anymore. The form is dead.
Everything's 3D. Everything's modeled. There didn't seem to be room for that.
But suddenly, the video game space opens up this whole great thing that had been closed off on television and movies
for two-dimensional artists, storytelling, and just opening up an entire medium that I don't think people had considered in that way.
One question, once again, is we have to be relying on VSTs turning in those things to feel like we affect it. What happens if you have VSTs who report only the bad stuff or nothing at all? Do you have VSTs from VSSs who don't do anything towards the clock? Of course, every VST doesn't submit every month. I assumed that going in. The whole idea of not making it...
You have to.
Yeah. Assuming it's... I mean, looking at it from a design standpoint, the idea is to get snapshots of what the Gero are after. Up to. So not getting that snapshot from every game isn't crippling because we're just kind of trying to take a slice of what they're doing.
You still get a straw poll. Any individual month, you're still getting a sampling of what happened. And whether or not that's entirely accurate, hopefully over the course of multiple games and months, it balances out.
Yeah, over time you get a sample out of it.
Yeah.
If we, I feel like, on the other hand, I feel like if we did make it mandatory, I think our response rate would actually be lower. Given how VSTs, not just VSTs, but the whole volunteer culture. When you make something mandatory, it becomes a responsibility. It becomes less fun.
There's also pushback. There's like, well, I'm not paid.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's the thing with most of these positions. I mean, we put a tremendous amount of pressure and expectations on people who are working for free, who are volunteering their time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that sort of doubles back to the BOD sort of. Slightly disappointingly low turnout.
But as for the other question, of course, is STs who give biased responses. I'm actually much less concerned about VSTs giving negative responses, like, oh my god, these guys, they ruined everything, the world is dead, advance the clock 3 minutes. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about...
I think the other is slightly more problematic. All my werewolves do is win, and they've brought the moon back.
I hate using the word, but it's descriptive and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. The real danger to things like the Doomsday Clock is the weak VST.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that insultingly, but I think you all know immediately what I mean when I say that phrase, the weak VST, is the VST who lets his players run him over. his plots get
there.
Well, I'm using his as the neuter. I'm not saying anyone in particular.
Right.
But their plots get run over.
Right.
Their antagonists die immediately. The VST, the hero murder everything and don't pay a cost. I mean,
stacking BSTs like Cordwood. Anything in the book that had, like, maybe they'll kill a Celestine or two.
Yeah.
Because who could have seen the players doing X, Y, and Z?
Right.
My hands were tied. Right. They won.
Now, I have not seen that situation much, but I will admit to doing a tiny amount of breaking and adjusting when local games go a little crazy. But I like that local games are going crazy. I like them having that flexibility. Let's see. The clock is a great way to show the viability of the global game.
Who is...
What?
Who is Woo Girl?
We do get these...
I'm chilled Rasmelon.
We do get these in a spreadsheet format. The VST's responses come to us through Google Sheets. We then process it through spreadsheets. And then monthly I will go through the spreadsheet and then I will hand adjust based on things that don't fit set categories, which is usually a lot from almost every ST. STs will be like, click this box, click this box, click this box. Also, these 7 things happen. And that's where it gets a little more art, a little less artifice, where you have to work out what that means for each of those things. So it is spreadsheet, but it's not mechanical because it can't be.
Yep.
What flavor are you guys vaping? This is Blue Door, which is a triple X blend. It's a pomegranate blueberry blend.
Yeah, I'm finishing up some of my pink, and then moving to some Ouzo. I'm all menthol all the time right now. I'm moving towards zero. I'm getting liquids in zero and just not doing nicotine anymore. So that's a fun adventure. So getting some sort of burn and hit is, I don't know, important. This isn't a vaping.
As opposed to the almost
stream.
TPK in Buffalo, asked Colin. I think that'd be a good fight to talk about. Do you think? Just to talk a little bit about a fight scene and how it can play out.
On many levels, it was a bunch of people almost died again, which happens pretty regularly.
Well, it also reminded me something about this system's combat that's very different. In traditional Werewolf, you have a fight, Bob goes down. Bob death frenzies. Bob goes down. Bob is dead. Bob is now out of the fight forever because Bob is dead. It doesn't look like that anymore.
No.
At this point, you have a fight, and then one character will drop. And that character is down, and unless they receive a killing blow, they'll be back up in 10 minutes.
Right.
But if they don't get that killing blow, they're not dead. Which means, as the fight goes on and more people start dropping in that fight, the ability to just withdraw from the fight becomes incredibly difficult. Like, when 3 members of your pack are down and you feel like you should withdraw, you can't withdraw.
Right. There's a poker sort of analogy there, because the blinds keep getting higher and higher. So it's like, well, you had one buddy down, flee or fight, and they're like, we'll keep fighting. It's like, well, 3 of your allies are now down. It's like, well, I'm not going to be one of the 2 PCs to survive this fight. So they're like, well, maybe we should stay, or maybe something will change.
What does it accomplish if I die? They're all dead.
Right. It was a weird example of...
Your PC almost died. I mean, you were the one they kept trying to kill.
I spent most of that combat dead.
Yeah.
I was just gleefully, like, because of Mind Link, I was just chilling, and if the coup de grace came, I was dead, and if it didn't, I wasn't dead. But it was so completely out of my hands that it was pretty liberating. And thankfully, one of our other players...
Glasswalker teleported in just in time.
Oh, no, that's not what kept me alive. What kept me alive was Steve's cog. There was a cog who was like, we're not losing people, man. He interposed himself into so many killing blows that he himself dropped, which is one of the things that led to the pile of bodies. So everybody kept basically becoming more and more invested in this combat.
The Child of Gaia character kept using all of his actions to assist Defender and kept dropping, and then somebody would heal him. He died 4 or 5 times in that fight altogether.
Yeah, I think the average
which
amount of damage...
Which is amazing for a Glasswalker. Just, not Glasswalker, a Child of Gaia.
Yeah, we took on average about 20 ag. And let me tell you, people are going to be like, well, whatever. There were no spirits involved, because as many bad guys, this was claimed territory by the enemy, who has a dot of occult. So stock 3 Gafflings weren't even going to manifest, so that was a non-issue. They couldn't have them, and we couldn't have them. So we only had one awakened major spirit somebody brought in with them, because otherwise it's just really no spiritual activity there to do.
Yeah.
Which made it way deadlier. It's sad that we sort of have to, I don't know, I don't want to say engineer scenes in a way that they're always happening on somebody's turf to prevent the spirit subgame, but until we get better rules at a national needs must.
I'm waiting for everyone to turn on us once that comes out, but it is what
I honestly, if I think of a lot of these things are fixed, I would hope that the player base doesn't revolt. I hope that they would be like, thank God, combat is now can have meaning without needing a VST to be so versed in every rule, especially with a newer game. Like, this isn't not that people played by the book anyway, even in Revised, but at least Revised, you could be like, look, the book's been out since the early 90s. Like, you should know the rules at this point, it being, the teens. But having BNS, it is fresh. Nobody's been playing with it for decades, so there's still a learning curve. I mean, most people who are running a BNS werewolf game have never run a BNS werewolf game because it didn't exist.
What has surprised you most at this point of the Chronicle? Speaking for myself, I'm going to say this. I'm surprised by how quiet the Geru are.
Here, click that so I can see what the hell, because that one turned off.
What, this?
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, that's much better.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm surprised by how quiet the Geru are. Honestly, most of the energy I'm seeing online, and I know live games aren't like this, but online, the Fera and Kinfolk are so loud, and they're planning, and they're interacting, and they're doing stuff, and the Geru are very quiet. And we talk all the time on staff about how we're going to kickstart that, and we keep trying things, and I'm hoping at some point we'll get it just kickstarted enough that the players will be able to keep rolling on their own.
I mean, I'd love to see parity, because it felt like everything was about the Geru, especially leading into the vote and various events. And now the focus has shifted to Fera, Kinfolk, and other plots. It would be nice if more of this was continually ongoing and engagement was more evenly spread. But if it's turn taking, that's fine too. I mean, at least everybody's getting a shot, and the rollover between the turns seems to be pretty rapid. And regardless of what kind of character you rolled in with, you should have something that could hook you, especially if you want to be hooked into plot, whether it be local, regional, or national. That's out there. There's a lot of dangling hooks. If you want them, bite.
And sometimes we have to be really unsubtle to draw attention to them, like Grandfather Thunder's post tonight. Hey guys, what's up with the Croatan spirits? Anybody?
And Bueller.
And the reason I felt compelled to draw attention to that is it has been leaked for more than a month, possibly since the start of Chronicle for different characters, so it just felt time to kick it. Speaking of which, you seem to be a subtle kind of ST, but you do bust out the overt attack baddies. Minus stories, would you prefer overt or subtle? For story, what has been your favorite so far this Chronicle?
Wait, minus story?
Like, setting aside story. Would you prefer...
I take umbrage with that.
I would say that APOC suffers when your enemies are too subtle.
Okay,
As a general statement, like, at some point, and to some degree, your enemy has to be overt and direct, because that's how they're wired. I mean, that is the storytelling that I feel like is what APOC needs to function. And the other problem is that's in a national game, and we discovered this last Chronicle when I tried to do something a little more subtle, is that because of the way national storytelling interacts with local, and always has, players have pieces, they don't have enough pieces, players don't talk, and players make bad inferences, which means that the plot never comes together.
There's a lot of breakdowns of communication.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's not. It's not on the players. It's on.
Some of it's on the players.
Some of it is on the players, but also it's just because if you're too subtle, the story doesn't come together right. At some point, you have to be direct enough to hit people in the hammer with it and say, "This is the issue. This is what needs to be resolved." The more subtle storytelling, which I do honestly prefer, I think is better for a local or convention venue. I think the national level stuff that we have to do is better served by being less subtle.
I mean, yeah, ish. As far as favorite story for this Cron, I've been liking the idea that the Sanctum is like all anti-Farah and have been like quietly having side deals with the whole Cairns on the line with the Farah. And that's gone almost completely unaddressed by the Concordat. They're just like, okay, I guess that's a thing that happened, but, you know, we're still better for you guys, right? For reasons. I mean, not demonstrable or objective ones, but, you know, because we're supposed to be.
Have you guys considered a level rating for how the previous month has gone, like the DEF CON rating? Well, that's already baked into the Delta. I mean, the change in the clock is like a month where the clock moves back 5 seconds is very different from when it advances 30. If the clock is moving forward significantly, y'all screwed up. And you should probably look to see what was done that month to see what caused that problem. The other thing is there are triggered effects as we hit different times, and we haven't seen that yet. But as we hit 55, 56, 57, 58, there will be in-game mechanical effects, which you will feel, and you're probably not going to...
I look forward to those.
Yeah.
I do, even though most of them will probably be catastrophically bad. I do look forward, because it makes the world feel realer when it's like, oh, this is like a new thing that happens because what players did.
Yeah.
In either direction, because I think that there's triggers in the other direction too. Right? Yeah. So...
no, absolutely.
Things will trigger if you win too hard as well.
There are also triggers for 53, 52, 51, 50, all the way down to 45. I need an interpretation. If you are healed by being downed, which puts you down for 10 minutes, do you wake back up? No, the book is clear about this, and you can actually have it open to that page right now.
Losing consciousness?
If you turn to page 357 in your book, I refer to that. When you are healed, you are stabilized, and let me see. Hang on. Losing consciousness.
You fall unconscious.
You've got to make a medicine shop to revive somebody. Yeah. A revived character who is still within the incapacitated wound trap falls unconscious if she does anything physically stressful like engaging in combat. Alternatively, returning at least 1 health level to the character through healing stabilizes. She remains unconscious for 10 minutes or unless she is healed to the injured track level. What does that mean? It means if you are knocked out in a fight, you are out of the fight unless somebody heals you up
all the way back to injured.
All the way through your injured level.
Right.
Unless somebody's making the medicine shop. If somebody makes the medicine shop, you are conscious, but if you take any combat action, you'll pass out. It's very similar to being knocked out and revised and being able to talk but not do anything else. So that's
being back to the injured level, I mean, that can happen.
Yeah, it does happen, especially when you have really strong healing talents or a cog around.
Healing 3 for 5 or 3 for 6.
Yeah.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah.
But no, just like not being out of health levels doesn't wake you back up. You're still down for 10 minutes. Unless again, you get really, really healed and then you can wake back up. Or that's the plain read. Stuff about quests.
Galliards had misplaced the ball. Oh my god, why is no one telling us about Croatan stuff? Well, it's out if you put in questions to your VST, have your VST ask me or one of the leads directly, and we will answer you within minutes usually. The challenge stuff, yeah. We all knew that everybody challenging in September was going to cause a log jam.
Yeah.
Especially everybody who came in fostering who wants to get to Adrian. I mean, which is probably most of it.
Fostering for life, bro. Fostering for life.
Bump it.
Neonate for life, too.
My hope is that it will probably start spreading out after this first round of challenges. So it's not going to be this bad again. This is probably just a first wave problem. I'm hoping so, at least.
I'd also be curious as to what the pass level is. And how hard some of these challenges are.
Yeah. Okay, what if you're given freshly injured or healthy wound tracks, a la friend in need? Okay, if you're out of health levels and somebody gives you a healthy level, that doesn't put you at healthy.
No.
Guys, come on.
All of your in-cap level has to be healed.
Yes.
To be at injured.
Friend in need specifically states you wake up if given a health level. Yeah, just like we can open it up to friend in need. Pop up friend in need for a second.
If that's how it works, that's how it works.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, let's pop it open. Take a look.
Let's see what those thingies are.
I think they're actually before that.
No. They're before
Yeah.
core systems?
No, it used to be that all the rules were, the gifts were
Okay,
towards the
here we
back.
go.
Now they're more in the middle.
So
So this would be under Bonar gifts.
Right.
Everybody's got a Bonar buddy.
Everybody has an awakened major spirit bone aura.
Yeah.
Let's be real for
Yeah.
a minute here.
For now.
Right. Exactly.
Friend in Need 3.
Friend in need. Share health levels.
218. Yeah, we just got there.
Select
Thank you.
a number of your healthy or injured health levels. Target. No, that's okay. Okay, if you loan one or more health levels to an individual who is currently unconscious, the target immediately regains consciousness. I mean, it's just something the power does.
Okay, and the way rules are structured is that you have your base rules and then gifts override those rules.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. So Friend in Need would override. Yeah. So Friend in Need would override the requirements for maintaining consciousness. So yes, if you did get a health level loaned through Friend in Need, you would be conscious and active, and not under the penalty of falling back out if you engage in a combat action.
Right.
The book seems clear to me. I mean, obviously, I'm not.
Oh no, you might fall back out. You just regain your consciousness.
Yeah, but you're not. Oh no, you're not under the penalty that if you take any combat action, you pass back out again.
I don't know if that's true. You would just. It just says you regain consciousness immediately, which means you're awake. I don't think it actually means that you're suddenly also have resist pain or the stamina focus.
Well, to me, it sounds like the unconscious tag is removed when you gain the health level back.
But
and this triggered requirement on page 351 is specifically in regards to the medicine skill wake up. So the gift is just different. That's my interpretation. Obviously, maybe rules has a different call, but reading the materials, that's my view of it.
STs. Look at your local STs.
I had kind of hoped we would have the rules update out by now. We're still working on it. Might be a little bit longer.
I thought so.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping we'd be able to discuss it tonight. We can't discuss it tonight. So that's why we're kind of focusing on
I don't know what they are. I just know they're in the pipe.
Yeah. I mean, there obviously are changes to things you know we're going to change, but I can't comment on anything.
I've had a number of rules colloquies over emails, and I think some were. I think most at this point have been responded to. Some had a conversation that just sort of petered out, or they're like, "No, we don't agree," and I'm like, "Okay." What can you do?
Well, this will be our first rules update since Chronicle launch. There's been no serious updates to the settings pack since Chronicle launch, which means even things like the the Anasazi hack have not formally been patched yet. The infinite actions or finite but bounded ridiculous action problem of the Anasazi, which I still think an ST should rule that it doesn't work like that, but things like putting that in the settings pack haven't come out yet, even though I think we've spoke on that very
Silver quality on a hexing fetish, winky face.
Let's leave that at a winky face. Let's leave that one.
I'm willing to just wink about that one. I think those sentences read the way those sentences read. I stand by my statements. I'm not.
Despite your best effort, still no formal hat.
So, yeah, I'm just gonna, and again, even if, here's the thing about rulings, especially about the really crunchy mechanical stuff. If it doesn't necessarily go my way, and it's not even my way, that's the thing, it's not for any of my builds. It was somebody asked me about it, and I gave them what I thought was a legitimate sort of, do this until you're told otherwise. Because as a player, that's my general philosophy. I mean, if it's a legitimate kosher read of a sentence, go for it. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, you just roll with it. I mean, some things aren't going to work. This whole game is massively abstracted. You can't... This isn't a realistic combat simulator. But I don't think any of these games were ever intended to be.
Ooh, Woo Girl with the sassy question. I don't know who you are, Woo Girl. I like the cut of your jib. What about stare downs with renewed vigors to generate gnosis for everyone?
It's great.
This is my formal response to that. Really?
Wait, how does renewed vigor read?
Pull it open. Watch it. It's hilarious.
You guys have the books open, apparently. Why am I turning to things?
Yeah.
It's only like we have a computer here.
But as for the InstaJib Anasazi hack, I'm not going to go into that because, one, I don't believe it has ever worked. It relies on some very optimistic interpretations of certain rules.
I also think the trick shot current reading is like so obviously not what they intended, but it is written the way it's written. So like I get why people kind of abuse it to get their one shot kills, but I don't like it, and I don't encourage it.
Technically, you can all play rock paper scissors in game for it, but stare downs is less ridiculous.
Less.
Let's focus on less for that one.
I don't even know what level Renewed Vigor is. I think it's a 2, 3?
Yep, Renewed Vigor requires you to accept an honorable surrender. They don't surrender, they just lose the chop. I like the cut of your jib while we're waiting to pull that up. Yep, whenever you do, or when you accept an honorable surrender. Yeah, stare down is not an honorable surrender, so that's the fix on that one. Thank you. Bucky's still desperately turning pages, so I'd like to thank you for bailing us out. Page 284. It's not your fault, it's not a PDF. I know.
What is this? I keep touching this
dead tree
massive
book.
dead tree.
Why did I pay extra for that?
It doesn't automatically turn to things. This is nonsense. Whenever you reduce an opponent's 0 health or when you accept an honorable surrender. Yeah, okay, so that's sort of undone in the first sentence.
Yeah.
The stare down isn't an honorable surrender.
Now people are asking what qualifies as an honorable surrender.
Well,
I'm going to turn to my lawyer friend.
Werewolf lawyer. Honestly, honorable surrender seems to be the kind of thing that has to specifically be called out either between PCs on the mound. I mean, an NPC can try it.
I would say on the...
Be like, especially if you want to appear more as a gray hat than a black hat, you can be like, you guys win, I'm showing throat, I honorably surrender.
Yeah, I would say...
Please don't execute me out of hand.
I would say honorable surrender would be showing throat and then not being killed. That's in Werewolf, that is usually what honorable surrender looks like.
And that's never on the line in a stare down.
Yeah, no one's going to die. That's the point, is the stare downs are usually not...
Or to avoid just killing each other constantly.
Yeah. Basically, when somebody offers an honorable surrender, they're basically putting their lives on the line. They're giving you an opportunity to kill them. And then you not killing them is honorable.
Right.
That's what an honorable surrender is.
Right. And then
so tapping out of a chokehold. I would...
I mean, tapping out is a non-verbal honorable surrender. You're like, I give up.
Yeah.
That you are acknowledging that you are surrendered.
I would say tapping out of a chokehold because they're under no onus to release the chokehold.
Now, here's the thing. Are you just joshing around with your buddy, or was life really on the line? I mean...
Were you actually going to kill this
Are
person?
you abusing this just for renewed vigor? Basically, here's the other thing. Spirits make all of this work. So the spirits have to buy this, which means your ST has to buy this.
That is a great point, actually, and one that's
sort of
often overlooked.
Right. Spirits taught Gara these gifts. You learn them from spirits. That's the underlying... Your renown, all of that is the spirit saying things. It's not just the voice of the ST. But the ST, at the end of the day, does have to reflect on some levels. The spirits being like, really? Really? Were you gonna kill him? Is this really about honor duel, or are you just putting him in a headlock and going noogies to give everybody noses?
I would say honorable surrender is in the litany exactly because Garu are terrible at it. I think that would be exactly why always accept an honorable surrender is in the litany, because they needed that stamped on their forehead.
Right, because otherwise they would just be like, I don't have to accept your surrender. I'm built to kill. Because
I'm Bob the murder hobo.
I'm a giant furry rage-fueled murder machine that occasionally goes into worm frenzy, and I'm definitely not tainted in any way by the worm.
No, shut your mouth. I am in no way tainted by the worm. I'm the good guy.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that this is generally where I have fun with NPCs, especially in other genres, who are like, you do know you're all worm tainted, right? Like, you might not all have worm affinity, but you are deeply flawed creatures that do worm things. Like, you just kill stuff all the time. It's worm frenzy. I mean, it's right there on the tin. You know how close you are to your worminess. Pretty much at all times. Also, you're cursed, guys. Like, I don't know if you noticed. But...
I had an NPC recently who was talking about the Geru, and he was like, they're broken, sad, deplorable creatures, and yet they have one virtue, and that's they just keep not being exterminated. That is their one virtue, is they keep being alive.
According to the BST's rollback, well...
It's harder to sell BSTs as the real hero.
In Revised,
you could make the argument.
There was a lot more factions to the BSTs. There really aren't BSD factions anymore. The BSDs in this are much more monolithic, and I think pretty aware that they're They're not just like misunderstood saviors. They are objectively bad. Like, now that they might want to win and they might have some sort of deeper game they're playing, but they know they're not the good guys.
They're definitely much harder to gray hat these days.
You don't have it's very difficult to be an ideological BSD at this point, because you used to be able to be a BSD in everything but name. You could be like, no, I pretty much identify with the overarching themes of the BSDs. I think that I can support the BSD faction that just wants to heal the worm, and that the worm is important, and there shouldn't be a winner to a triadic conversation. They're all of Gaia.
Right.
But you don't really see that as much. There's maybe a little bit of push from that from certain tribes, like your Stargazers are generally going to say shit like that, and they might get weird looks.
It's also harder to make the conflicted BSD because the BSDs are not in an equilibrium state versus the Giru anymore. In Revised, they weren't perfectly balanced off each other, but the war was in question. As BNS opens, the Gaians have lost.
Right, you guys have been losing the war so hard.
This is actually a note that I do need to push with players more.
Yeah, I said Stargazers. I mean, that's the core tribe that is like, we can't just get rid of the worm, right? Like, that's as noxious as saying, let's get rid of the wild or the weaver. Like,
No, my point is more that a lot of players overlook how badly they got fucked in the book. And by that I mean things like the Cairn Plague, how many Geru died, how few are left, how badly you're outnumbered by the BSDs. Now set that aside with the Geru.
We have all of Revised being very big damn heroes.
Yeah.
It's very big damn heroes.
One thing that surprised...
I think people want to jump to big damn heroes way too quick. Like, I don't really feel like this game is that game.
As we smash cut to the opening credits for the Chronicle, we're basically at 300. I mean, shit is fucking grim.
Right.
But the other thing that's really often overlooked is... Yes, I understand about the Kitsune and the world-ending joy, but that's in there, yes. But the other thing that especially Pharaoh players need to keep in mind, and I think it's shocking how many Pharaoh players don't know this or don't internalize this, and this isn't even talking about the Pharaoh discussion that's going on right now. Pharaoh players have just compartmentalized the fact they lost their grottos, their den realms, their pocket dimensions, their happy places. Right. All of their Cairn equivalents, they failed to save them. That is something that's really often overlooked when they're shitting on the Geru. Like, why won't the Geru share their Cairn seeds? Their Cairns. Why are all the Cairns Geru Cairns? But if you but if you step back and look in the backstory, the Pharaoh had all those things 10 years ago. And they lost them all. The grottos were all destroyed. The den realms were all destroyed. All the various things, the various pocket Nanikins.
Not all Farah had their Cairn equivalents.
But everybody who did have them...
The Koraks wandering in the diaspora.
Yeah. Wandering the desert. But that's an important thing to keep in mind is that when you're shitting on the Geru for being selfish, shitty, rude, second-class citizen, however you want to put it, just remember that the Geru... by throwing their bodies on the problem, which is what they did. They abandoned their home seps and all ran to the 13 Great Cairns and basically covered the Cairns with their bodies. And most of them didn't come home, but they saved them. And that is why there's anything resembling hope now. If all the Great Cairns had been destroyed, the world would pretty much have been over with. So the Geru are, one, understandably very protective of their Great Cairns because it's all they have left, and they saved them. And they might be reluctant to give them to the Pharaoh because you lost them all.
I see Nuisha being mentioned as all Cairns are their Cairns.
Oh, yeah. Good on you. Fun note on Nuisha, by the way. Let me just transition for a second. I had a Nuisha talking shit to Grandfather Thunder, and I didn't zap him because I couldn't zap him. I'm like, Grandfather Thunder can't zap a Nuisha for cracking a bad joke. He can't do it. It can't be done. He can't do it.
Not only that, he should get Gnosis back.
Yeah, he probably should get Gnosis back, yeah.
God, that power.
If you guys go full PvP, which is what Valfer just mentioned, you will all die. I will kill all of you. I mean, if you want to have PvP elements, that's great. But if a war of rage breaks out...
Which is not to say that wouldn't be an awesome game for the next 2.5 years.
No, it could be awesome fun, yeah.
Let's call a fig a fig.
Yeah.
I'm trying to replace the nomenclature of that ancient saying because people are... It's not just in this, but in also other Facebook groups. People are getting real quidgy about that. It doesn't even matter if you quote the like fucking Greek version of it from ancient Greece. They're still like, I don't know, don't use those words. So calling a trowel, game's gonna end anyway. I mean, let's be real. So
I will let them die early.
Right. Let's have. Well, and that's always on the table.
Yeah.
They could just lose,
Yeah.
or they could just win. I mean, like, that's got to be possible. But players driving a game, an entire game, on like a local, regional, and national level that they want, or at least a plurality or majority of them want, that's pretty awesome in its own right. I don't know if it's going to happen,
or if it's a good idea, but it's
or if
fun.
or if it's a good idea. But human history is also replete where where
they should really work together on this one.
I mean, discussing the I don't know. This is going to sound like this is a pretty deep aside for you history majors, but discussing things like the Sicarii and other zealous groups in sort of Judaic history during a pretty big argumental throwdown. There was a point when fighting basically Romans and other people where there were factions of different orders, and one of their strategies was like, hey, you know, if we burn their food stores, I mean, this is real TLDR, but if I burn their food stores, they won't be able to hold out against the Romans, which means I win. And then the other guys will go, well, we'll burn their food. We'll all do that. We'll all fight amongst each other, and this way we'll be the real winners in the end. Then Rome won. I mean, so that it does happen where a lot of people sort of agree with a certain level of madness. Doesn't always work out.
Historically, all Farah got screwed by story, and players, many of whom have not even read anything in the story because MES changes stuff all the time, it feels like Farah are screwed for the sake that they weren't Geru. That's my opinion, because Rokea used to outnumber Geru but got nuked. Then the Plague and the Grottos and the Cairns happened, pretty one-sided. Yeah, exactly. We're running by the book, so you can go by every word in the book.
I mean, what was it? The Blood in the Water, Blood Tide, like they
Blood
had their
Tide.
They had their own like pseudo, like, I don't want to say it. They had their working man Cthulhu Quirm, or am I thinking of the meat substitute? They had something.
They were spelled
like
pretty much the same. Yeah.
Basically anything with tentacles, from a cuttlefish to Cthulhu himself, was evil. All of, not arthropods, the other ones, all gastropods are evil. They had their own struggle and their own
Quirrell.
Sure. I mean, look, if it tastes like a corn dog, at the end of the day, I don't care what it's made of. But it's one of those things. They had their own entire thing, and it was like, the games just don't need that, and they are ancillary. Also, you can't, entire games, everybody playing fish has its own issues. Also, I mean, it's also a problem with the lupus and everybody, or cephalopods. Well, there's also cephalopods. Well, what are gastropods?
Snails.
Oh.
They move on their stomach.
Not a scientist.
The one thing I'll say about...
Definitely not a marine biologist.
One thing I'll say about the salt that I'm seeing down here... How do I put this? I don't want Farah to accept that they're supporting characters and sit down when the Geru are talking to you. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying
This isn't the original Changeling. Sorry.
What I am saying is that Pharaoh players should recognize what is in the backstory for the game and why the Geru are acting the way they are. And I think if you read the backstory and understand the extinction level event that you guys went through less than 10 years ago, I think you'll internalize better what the innate conflict is that's baked into the system. I'm not saying RTFM, but I'm saying maybe you want to.
I mean, they're having that discussion now as well. I mean, like, for example, the game Vampire isn't about ghouls. It's not. I mean, I'd like there to be more
But you can
ghouls.
have amazing ghoul story. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's Werewolf the Apocalypse. Werewolf are the stars of the story. But that doesn't mean Farah and Kinfolk can't have amazing stories. However, those players do need to recognize that the story of the game world, isn't going to revolve around them.
No.
Except in so much as they're part of the werewolf story. But that still leaves a huge room for play. I mean, I think a third of our players are playing Farah. Or at the very least, a third of the PCs are Farah. I mean... Yeah. They're a huge part of the story.
Although I think some of that's somewhat misleading. Like, my alt is a Farah that I never played. Like, I think I've played him for one session.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think some of the censuses are a little bit flawed that way.
Yeah.
As to who's most active, right? But it's still not really the kinfolks thing. They are
by some tribes. I mean, it's mellowed out in BNS though.
Right. Even if it doesn't even matter that they're not property. Like when Changeling happens, the game won't be about the Canaan, like or the unshattered or people who haven't crystallized yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not really. It's just not really about them. They're a huge force in the game and a huge factor in the game. Another good one would be like Revenants. The game's not about Revenants. It's not really about vampires even, or like the truly thin blood. It's really going to be a game about most vampires with the gen background of the regular 1 to 5 dots.
With the caveat that you're still a huge and important part of that story. It's just the story isn't written with you as a viewpoint character. And it's just something to keep in mind. I think the Farah have been doing amazing things. I love watching what they're doing. I may be desperately trying to slow them down a little bit when they get a little too exuberant.
I mean, I like the idea of kinfolk doing stuff. They're fine.
Yeah.
I don't really have strong opinions on it. I'm not playing a kinfolk, so I don't really get to see that much of it, but seems legit. I would try to keep the salt icy. There's no reason to get salty.
I've noticed we're really bad at that as an org. Like, it's just keep it in IC, guys. Keep it IC. Especially with a lot of these conflicts, guys. Keep it IC. Jesus.
Yeah.
It's a good story. If you hate each other, it's a good story.
Bleed is bad. I mean, we had a whole episode where we talked about bleed. It's not unique to gaming, although it's hella common in gaming. If I wear a Bills jersey, right now, what? Did the Jets win? Are they currently number one in these? No, they lost. No. Okay. But if I wear a Yankees jersey in Boston, a lot of people who experience bleed between Major League Baseball and real life are going to have terrible opinions of me as a human being and may even be violent. So we're not dealing with that level of bleed where there are bars you can't go to if you're playing Farah. So it is important to keep some perspective about that. But on the other hand, any amount of bleed is probably too much bleed.
I want to give
especially when it's bad.
I want to give an example and turn the perspective around. Dark Puppy gives the example. It doesn't help when if kinfolk find a thing to do, and then the Geru kick in the door to steal their shit and burn the house down behind them. I want you to flip your perspective in that, and take for a moment to think that is an awesome story beat. Imagine you have a kinfolk detective. He's worked his ass off to crack the case. He thinks he's figured it out. He's done it all without powers. He's in hard mode, so he's doing it without any real powerful powers or gnosis or spirits.
All 1s and 2s.
Yep. But he got the job done. He figured it out.
And then some fucking galliard gets the credit.
And then some fucking other guy comes in, smashes the door in. Your beautiful, subtle plan to resolve everything without bloodshed is demolished by the Geru who run in screaming and smash everything, and you're just left standing there among the ashes. Yeah. I think that's a great story. I think that's awesome. I think you should turn that around and realize that you can make that about, if you make it about you and your character's journey in this world with these fucked up murder monsters you have to deal with because they're your family.
Right. That's good.
I think that's awesome.
That's a fascinating take.
Yeah.
It's being a guardsman in sort of Terry Pratchett's Discworld, right?
Yeah,
they get their own books. They matter. They're important. They're hugely important at various points. They're not wizards. They're not. What they're doing goes basically unsung. Whether or not they're saving the world or just bringing a specific troll gangster to justice or whatever. Being an unsung hero is a story.
Yeah.
You see it in comics a lot.
Yeah.
Characters like Constantine and what. They don't get credit. Like,
it's less great when it happens for the 5th or 6th time. No, that's when it becomes amazing stories. Like I said, that's Constantine's story. Constantine is one of the greatest comic book characters of all time. He never gets to win. He never gets to accomplish what he's trying to do without loss. And somebody else always gets the credit if he does something awesome. And what do you get? One of the greatest comic book characters of all time. I would say own your disappointment and make it a story beat, and maybe change how you approach the Geru. Maybe you're thinking maybe this makes you bitter. Own that bitterness. Maybe that makes you want to work with them in a different way. Maybe, I mean, there's all sorts
Maybe
of...
you suddenly realize that the BSDs might be right. Your bosses are terrible.
You're one bite away from changing teams. I mean, there's story there and there's tension. And while that does suck in the moment, I think when you step back, I think you can find really cool story there.
I mean, yeah, maybe you become a hunter.
Yeah.
We don't have a hunter book yet. So I would stick to the things you can become right now, even if that's a little bit meta. But yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's time for you to start gathering skins. I mean, you're only a top approval away from flipping teams.
Or just, I guess, I mean, if you go real skin dancer, you're basically saying, I'm going autark. I'm taking the powers and I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to kill anyone who crosses me.
Well, that is
Let's see how long I can last.
Well, that is the question. I mean, there's a lot of steps before flipping teams. Like, just owning your discontent, getting organized, maybe find some young Cleoth who you can get to rely on you. They won't be Cleoth forever. Start creating a connections with other Geru who are more sheepish and less social. Start building relationships. Please, no alien angel crazy.
Oh yeah, well, so it was totally the worm
Hunter.
loves your anger. Yes,
Yeah,
free trigger, join the dark side. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I love playing gray characters.
Mm-hmm.
None of my characters are good people.
I think gray
or
hats.
Geru.
I think gray hats are where story is. I think white hats have a role in the game. I'm not sure if black hats do. Just because evil is so boring, like character-wise. Once you've gone
in this
black,
system, being a true black hat
is super boring. You have choice removed from you. You don't have character beats anymore.
They've made the worm a monolith, so you don't even have the old worm where you can be like the more lectury, intellectual bad guy.
Yeah,
you're still stuck in the same club with people with all the tentacle monsters and head bombs and all that.
I mean, that's why I'm very, very reluctant to approve antagonist concepts. It's because they're not interesting. There's no journey for that character. That character's journey ended when they fell, and now they're just something that's happening.
Their journey. Hang on. There is a role for extremely dark gray. I would say,
Castillo.
No, not even that. Because he was gray.
In the end, he wimped out on evil. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do anything black hatty. No, for me, it's like the Ananasi have the option of going full black hat. But what they would do is if for some reason the Doom clock dropped below 45 minutes, good guys were winning so hard that they were about to destroy the worm and maybe threaten reality. Like,
yeah,
all of the were spiders turning on them and being like, no, we can't let you do this, you crazy people.
The redemption aspect, the problem is once you fall, that redemption aspect becomes externalized. You no longer will seek redemption for yourself because you fall into the worm. Somebody else would have to try to redeem you. Your drive to redeem yourself, your soul, so to speak, is
you should never walk the spiral with the idea of eventually getting the merit Erebus survivor. That's not...
Well, because once you walk the spiral, you won't have any interest in that. Your soul has been changed. So the redemption storyline, the internal redemption storyline, doesn't exist once you've completely fallen. When you're toitering, absolutely. But when you've completely fallen, that now belongs to other characters to follow that. Your character has no more journey,
right?
Narratively.
Well, and you don't really have the gifts or the systems anymore to really back up that sort of game, which is also a little bit unfortunate. I mean, not that anybody took, was it Gift of Wormwood, the Wendigo rank 5 gift. Whenever a corrupted Wendigo died or was killed, other Wendigos should always have winced with really, you couldn't even let us use the gift to cure them of all taint for at least a conversation of is this really who you want to be, before you just chop their heads off and send them back into the cycle. So that's part of that.
Well, this is a harsh note from Valfor here. You read that.
Somehow the setting made it for hundreds of years in backstory. Then APOC happened, and all the Farrakhan folk are like, flip it all on its head. Farrakhan folk versus Geru kind of said, "OC to me, masquerade with fur. This is a great setting and story, but rather just burn it to the ground to stand up for the first time in all history, killing the overall meta of the game.
Well, I think in large part that depends on your local game. I know there are local games where I think that is not great now.
Well, because in our games, there are no elements of that. Mm-hmm. So your mileage is really going to vary.
Well, it's a lot more out west, honestly. And the Eastern games don't have this as much. But we are seeing.
I mean, that might be true too. I
yeah.
can't simultaneously go to every game every weekend.
Right.
But you're going to see a lot of games that may have this. That might be unfortunate. It depends on how the players feel about it.
Correcting that is very much in the hands of the VST to sort of push the game back where it needs to be. It's not even something we can do anything about at National. But I do think that is something you should have a serious conversation about your storyteller and with your fellow players. Because I think that is the sort of thing that should be corrected. If the game is moving too much towards the stuff Alpha's talking about here, honestly.
Yeah. Let's scroll down something a little bit more recent. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we can use that as a beat to... well, let me just play off the last of the player agency thing. As long as you have player agency...
This is the dark side of player agency.
Right. Yeah. The dark side of player agency is you could end up with a game you don't want to be in.
You can love the book. You can love the setting in the book. You can love what you think is happening. But because of player agency, you could walk into a game that isn't
that game.
I mean, that is the danger with what we're doing of allowing so much flexibility.
Right. So the downside is that without player agency, all you have is STs who will be accused of having everything on rails, in which case it would be true. If they're just completely rebuking and repudiating player agency to just make sure the game is exactly static.
Well, and the other problem, I mean, the static game is, I mean, we've all seen the static game where player actions aren't allowed to affect anything at local or national level. These are the things that have to happen. This plot is going to play out now. This is the way things are going to happen. Da 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 da, and it's dead.
Right.
But the problem is, with the danger we always have to keep in mind is that too much agency leads to chaos, complete chaos that wanders so far from the book the game becomes unrecognizable, and that is something we wrestle with, especially in regards to the Ferris stuff.
As a genre, as an org as well. I mean, when you look at some of the problems of other organizations, you would get an email where it's like, there is no Detroit anymore. I remember that happened years ago. There was is basically like a micro Gehenna hit Detroit.
It is Obi-Wan.
Yeah, like dragons destroyed it. There was a million Bali. Everybody died. Detroit wasn't on the map, and you were just told in your game you have to roll with that. Detroit is gone.
Dear sir,
sir or madam, Detroit, Michigan no longer exists. Work it in if you can. Ignore it if you have to.
Yeah, and. What do you consider to be the minimum for a sept to be ready for a seed? Well, I think that's in large part covered in the book, honestly. I don't think we have much more on top of that.
You do need a certain number of gnosis to fuel the thing, right?
Yeah. So minimum Gaian count, have a site, have the site cleaned, have the site patrolled. And the other grayer thing is that, remember, all cairn seeds allow you to open a gateway up to the great cairn from where they came from. Now, remember we were talking about this, how jealously the Giru protect their few surviving cairns. So keep in mind that they want to be very careful about who they give cairn seeds to, because if you're taking a cairn seed and you can't protect it,
it's a door to the other cairns.
Which is a problem I actually have with the a narrative thread I see a lot, which is people having STs saying, well, you need to do a quest because this cairn seed was lost. Happening a lot. Now, I think that's a fine note to hit once in a while, but if you do it too much, I think it's damaging to the any sense of verisimilitude in the genre. If cairn seeds were honest to God being lost all the time, great cairns would be falling all over the place. I mean, the BSDs getting a hold of a cairn seed should be a nightmare scenario. It's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I guess this also dovetails to a discussion of player inclusivity. For out of character stuff or out of game stuff. Inclusivity must be a default stand. I mean, everybody should, within certain normal tolerances of the word everybody, be included in game. Like, regardless of race, creed, color, alienage, and other factors. I mean, that should be the default. There's no other stance that's really acceptable. As far as in-game inclusivity, it gets really complicated, because if you walk into a game where you have like 12 players, 11 of whom are Sanctum, one's a Silent Strider, and they're running a Cairn, and you roll in, you want to be a I don't know, a worm-aligned Were-Spider Arun. And you're like, why don't I get my own ST to run my adventures on the side? There's going to be realistic issues with that. You don't want players splitting games or expecting that they get their own staff dedicated to them, because I don't think those are realistic expectations. So you want games that have a relative amount of diversity, but if there is a monolith there, that's just something the local game's got to deal with. And then the question becomes, do you want to join that game? Which, I mean, sometimes it'll be yes, sometimes it'll be no. I don't think they should fall under the same sort of rubric in discussion. They're very different things.
The same thing happened a long time ago when the Balefires went out in the last Dreaming Chronicle. That exact situation is something I think about all the time. That is a situation where National is doing something that seems like great story, and they don't think about what it is, and they end up fucking whole regions and destroying games. The scenario of the Balefire scenario from the last Changeling Chronicle scares the shit out of me, because it is a way I could very easily fail, seeming like I'm doing the right thing, and it's something I worry about all the time.
It's fair.
This is a question I get a lot. A lot of people have talked about the right of acceptance and the possibility of altering it so Farah don't need to join the nation to join Accept. Thoughts? I would respond to that with a question, which is, what difference does it make? I honestly want to know the answer to that question. What difference does it make?
Well, we'll probably have to scroll
down. I know we will scroll down. But I want to know
your response.
Why is that? What is? Because I think the underlying issue, the underlying question, aside from the right of acceptance issue, I think is actually the much more interesting question. So if you want to phrase that, I'll try to respond to it. Okay.
I've got talking about the bite. That's fine. Pits don't get seeds. No. Yeah. The bad guys make cairns the old-fashioned way. They just raise them.
Yep.
They're in no way limited to seeds.
The cairn plague should not affect the BSDs.
No.
Should a city with a pit have a seed? Yeah. I don't see why that would make a difference. Almost all cities have pits. BSD pits.
No. But I don't know if
it might be that maybe your cairn location is too close to where the pit would be.
I guess that I don't know if that's the question, or if bad guys get seeds is what they're saying.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Bad guys
otherwise, if the BSDs had cairn seeds, there would be no great cairns.
No, well, I don't think it's you have no idea what the spirals do. You do. They build them the old-fashioned way. They howl, and then they build them.
Yep. The right of cairn raising works fine for the BSDs. BSDs make cairns. They're not cairns the same way they always did.
Yeah.
Okay. A city that has an active pit and a SEP with no seed. Should that SEP good for a seed while the pit stands?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Is it a smart move to put a seed next to a pit?
I would say that's a question of degree, and that's very much up to your local situations. If your cairn seed is far away from the pit and you can defend it, is a very different situation than you guys share a mall. So I really think that just really much depends on the situation. I don't think there's any black line rule that says if you have a pit, because almost all cities have pits. Because they didn't lose
Some
them.
believe if you follow the Garrett Nation, you have to follow the Garrett Litany.
That is it. See, that is the issue. That is a question for sept laws. That is less... The thing about the Garrett Litany issue is, what do sept laws say about Farah who have taken the right of acceptance? This is... Honestly, and I've been saying this, and I don't know if it's getting traction, this is much less a national issue for how the right of acceptance works globally than it is how it works in your local game.
Right, it can be a local issue, or even on a different level, a lower... So we're having this debate in New York on whether or not to have a constitutional convention to solve all of our ails, and a lot of people are going to vote no on it, and I'm actually still on the fence about it. I think it's... There's a lot of issues there. But at its core, most of the problems that could be solved by a conventional constitution, like the highest level of the state, rewriting its state constitution to address all these things, can also be addressed through the amendment process, of which there's usually a pretty significant amendment to the New York State Constitution about once every 4 years, give or take. Sometimes more, sometimes less. So why have one?
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that, by analogy, both options are off the table. So you can keep fighting the good fight to have systematic national change, but if your local septs, as in our sept laws, Koraks can be in the sept, but follow their own litany. You could just have that rule.
Right.
I mean, done.
Yeah. And then it becomes more a question of, if you're traveling to other septs, what do those septs make of the right of what rules do they have for Farah? I really think this is best handled at the local level, and I know there's a lot of people who want a general thing that Farah joining right of acceptance, don't join the Garu Nation. I mean, it's a rule. Right,
I don't know if that's
but beyond that, I think it's a simple rule.
Yeah, it could work. It could not work.
I mean, turning the right of acceptance into 3 granular levels of rights, which I think is the only possible solution, I think that just turns into a kind of logistical headache. He's recognized but not acknowledged. Well, he's recognized and acknowledged, but he's not sanctified. I don't want to deal with that. So I really do think it's best handled locally.
I don't think a lot of people realize the level of local law that you can do if you have a motivated auspicial council and...
Well, how decentralized the Garu Nation is. It's not like every sept answers to an archon. Unless the counselors actually take an interest, and they're only going to take an interest if you're fucking up, it's not going to be an issue.
Right. And right now they're so deadlocked and so politically different from each other that I'm not sure if the tribal council could vote for a favorite pancake, let alone to do any sort of big reforms or changes to your cairn or even need to directly address what's going on in whatever sept.
Well, people want it at national level so they can override the local level. Same as why people try to get federal laws passed instead of state levels. And this is why the federales will not pass certain laws.
Right, but here the federal government is largely just a small staff of people trying to run an entire imaginary world. And local, at least, is where people are.
At least the vampires have a bureaucracy. The Garu Nation has no bureaucracy. It's just got 13 guys. And gals.
Right.
And red talons. But there's no there. There's no government. I mean, there's a very limited...
Because it's TC's decision trip.
Yeah.
Put the human lover Red Talon in tribal council. Who's the human loving Red Talon?
I think that's you. Braun might vote for pancakes. Sure.
That character does not like people. Mm-hmm. But that's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. That's an icy issue.
Yeah. I'm actually really tangenting. I am really happy right now that the Fianna player base and Braun are not on the same page about a lot. I think that's actually fairly great. I think that's over time going to lead to great story.
I don't know why more Garu don't just follow their tribal counselor to the bathroom and get rid of them. Honestly, or even non-violently.
I keep giving them shots. I keep giving players shots.
Hang on, I've said it in other podcasts, and I will say it again. It's not vampire. You don't actually have to just murder the dude and everybody the dude or a lady, whoever, the tribal counselor, just kill everybody who could ever come back to you. If you beat them and you become the tribal counselor, it's part of the litany. They gotta listen to you. And also, nobody vengeful NPCs is just not something that I think is compelling enough to really worry about.
Tribal counselors are NPCs, but we do loan them out to local games a lot.
Yeah.
And this is one thing I wanted to warn you guys about now that we're here talking together. Is something to keep in mind is...
Yeah, for now. That is... Seriously, they are for now. If you were an elder, they're not legends. The tribal counselors are not legends.
One of them is an Athro.
No, one of them is an Athro. You can beat these people.
But the other thing to keep in mind, and this is
just do that.
And this is true with high-level NPCs like Pentex boards of directors. What I would suggest is we do give you fair shots at canon NPCs, but often we won't tell you they're coming. So it might behoove you as a player to have plans in place. If there's some NPC you want to give a good killing, Have a plan in place about what you might do if they wander into your city. Because I promise you, over time, the chances are very high that they will wander into your city. We had a case a couple weeks ago where a Pentax board of directors member was seen in a city. And one player actually made a run. They didn't get the job done, but they made a run. And I hope their story gets out. Because
which Pentax member, if I can ask?
It was JC. Wilderboom.
Oh.
Tell us.
You know what?
But the player immediately took a run, and I respect the shit out of that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say, okay, none of the actual board of Pentax directors, I'm not gonna describe any of them as easy to kill, because I think that's just not true. But some of them are way easier to kill than others. and even the ones who might be really, really hard to kill generally have a way that you can just end them.
I would say it's probably a reverse scale. The scarier they are, that might be the easier they are to kill.
Right, but the more likely they are to also kill you.
Yes.
If you're just in a room with them, there's a lot of them who are very good at like annihilating you, but aren't really good against, a cabal of PCs acting against them. Because who is? In BNS, if you're grossly outnumbered, I mean, these aren't Celestines. They don't get magical retests. They just have a pile of powers. And
they have the same powers you do. Yeah, there's no made up...
Pentax has a bunch of powers you do not have.
Okay, we're talking about Pentax, yes.
But they don't have special pleadings like some of the other things. They don't just magically have retests. We didn't ignore the rules.
They might be using rules from 3 different books, but by God,
they're using those rules. Yeah, they don't get, like, magical bullshit powers.
Yeah. When a NPC gets loaned out and then challenged, is that run by National or the VST? Well, the VST has control of that NPC for the day. We expect them to be responsible with it, and if the NPC walks up to somebody, pins a medal in the chest and makes you president of calendars, we're probably going to look a little closer at that. I mean, if there's a challenge for late down the road, I would prefer that was handled by the VST. I think that's much better to do a scene like that live. But if it needs to be handled by National, be handled by National. That's too case by case to make a ruling. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so there is, again, the combat is really abstracted. If you came up with some sort of Ocean 11's plan to have a guy in a sub-basement and then level a whole building to then smush him, if you could get a bunch of VSTs or a whole chain of them to agree that'll work, it'll work, but not because it's doing sheet damage. You know what I mean? That's just going to be ruled by fiat. Because, okay, for example, there used to be an old example with, fortitude. If you're hit by a train, you're still going to get killed. Well, right now, trains, like airplanes and all other vehicles, don't really have health levels. Or they might have one, maybe. And occasionally, if they have the rugged quality, they have 2. So an Amtrak train has 2 health levels. That's horrible. That's horrifying.
Don't think about it. Don't
think about it. ST should still be like, you can't derail an entire train with a slap. But, I mean, mechanically you can, obviously. But you do need to roll with your STs about, what's going on and how that can work. And a lot of that's going to come down to, I don't want to say ST fiat, but let's call it dramatic negotiation.
I hear you're going to the Northeast Regional Showcase event. I was really going to try, but I had a coworker quit on last week. So my job is going to be short-staffed for the near future.
Oh, the one November 10th or 11th?
Unfortunately, I don't believe I'm going to be able to make it now.
That's a hell of a day trip.
I mean, I was really thinking about it, but I just don't think I can do it right now, unfortunately.
I don't need a lot of excuses to eat at Hey La Moon, which, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the 3 only things that Boston does well, is dim sum. If you live in that area and you haven't been to Hey La Moon, I don't even know why you still live there. Like, I really don't. And yeah, just go there and then eat.
Here's a good point. You tell me a Pentax douche is coming 2 months out, and I will make you a building leveling present for the guy. That's exactly the point. Is you don't get that notice, but what I'm saying,
you don't get that notice for tribal counselors either.
Yeah, what I'm saying as a heads up is, I would think about having those contingencies in place as a standing thing. Have your kill boxes oiled and prepped, is what I'm trying to tell you. Yes, this episode is brought to you by WD-40 for all of your lubrication of kill box requirements.
Well, can us do more damage than buildings? Well, right, okay. So the chunky salsa rule, common sense. These are all words that can often destroy games and players' opinions of staff.
I don't know the chunky salsa rule.
if it should turn everybody in an area to find mist, then it should probably kill you.
Yes.
Like, and there was, especially in Revised, there was a lot of, like, be reasonable. If you fall off a skyscraper, you're still going to get dead or hit by a train.
With no rules.
With no rules.
That was the worst.
They were like, there's no...
Fucking Revised.
Yeah.
Like, Aegis. Things like getting hit by a train might get through Aegis. We don't know what that means, but just keep it in mind.
Shadowrun has both up and downsides when it comes to things that will kill you, because occasionally players would be like, oh, I hear whistling noise. It's like, well, let's see if you can soak light naval damage. What is your bulwark rating?
I don't have a bulwark rating.
I don't have a bulwark rating. What has a bulwark rating? Ships? Are you not a ship? No, you were dead. You were just completely dead.
And I will say, the player who spends a level 5 influence action to always have a safe prop prepared for the final action.
Oh, you're talking about the rebounding damage roll in enclosed spaces with grenades. Yes, that was a rule. I think it was in Field of Fire originally, and then they worked it, or the Mercenary book.
My point is, the player who invests to be ready for that moment when that NPC randomly wanders through your game, that is your ticket to gaming immortality. Like, those moments are what Chronicles are all about. And it might never happen, but
we've had
being
this
prepared.
theater set up for the last 12 months with influences to have a very important Broadway show up, and then the entire building is a death trap for whoever we bring there.
Right.
Like, using every power, fetish, everything.
I honestly think being prepared like that for operational opportunities that may arise, I think is smart. And this is the way I want players to be thinking. I want players to be thinking like this. I want players to not just be thinking tactically. I want players to be thinking strategically. And I think it's something we can do better at.
Yes.
So, yeah. Good. Yeah. Dream blah. Plan bigger. Yes, dream bigly. Players of Mind's Eye Society Apocalypse, if I could say one thing to you, it's that dream bigly, plan bigger.
Dream bigly. Make your dreams just the most lavish, beautiful dreams. Takes the loose for it. I mean,
this is the other thing. If you guys were exchanging intel about how they get away, because we're not Kelvin balling, you can counter those things. If somebody's,
I don't want to give anything away, but I know that there's at least one member on the board of Pentex who could probably be killed with a single chop.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing
we're not going to tell you who that is.
I will say, just obvious thing, guys. If you're dealing with antagonists who have cell phone teleport, have a cell phone jammer.
I mean, in the real world, they're super illegal, and you might get arrested.
Well, yes.
But in the world of darkness, where you're going to murder a dozen people on any given evening...
Yeah, one shot, one kill might not be a thing, but if the guy whose plan was to cell phone teleport away can't...
Well, it's one of the reasons why I made sure to have the right attribute focus making Red Talon.
Yeah.
It'd be like, all you have to do is make a phone call? You can't. You can't communicate at all.
No.
You can't even speak.
This is why going
you
first...
can jam tech the phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you could make it so all phones don't work. But you know what? Jam tech is a gift, which you actually have to use against... the baddies,
right?
As opposed to a cell phone jammer, which could be you just tell the ST you turned it on. If you're on us, he does it using their venoms 3 to 5. No, but I'm still saying it's still
but you have to
power.
throw a chop. You have to throw a chop for it. Whereas the cell phone
turning
jammer,
on a cell phone jammer is just a story conceit.
Yeah,
because there's no anti-cell phone jammer. I mean, they could turn on their cell phone jammer.
I will say lack of communication is obviously one of the major heads of the worm. I will agree with that. That is a Maja spirit of the worm that is infesting the Hero Nation right now, is lack of communication. There is so much operational intel you guys could be using.
What was the old thaumaturgy ritual, the bureaucratic overload or whatever? Nothing can get done. Nobody communicates right. It costs 3 times the paperwork.
Yeah.
So one of the advantages that the bad guys have is that they are, well, at least when it comes to Pentex, they're like hella more organized than the good guys. Yeah. Yes. They have inter-office memos. I mean, they literally can get
Dark
memos.
Puppy makes the bold observation that worm guys don't get Weaver affinity. That is a bold statement, Dark Puppy, and I salute you for it.
Too true.
Yeah, they may definitely have glass walker gifts. Wow, that was
Right,
weird.
but they don't get their
They
merits.
definitely don't get Weaver Affinity. Yep.
Nor do they get Weaver Affinity,
Yeah.
which you would have to be in the Concordant for. Bureaucratic condemnation sounds legit.
Yeah.
If that's what it was, that's what it was.
Yeah.
There was a similar one to have paperwork.
Yeah, efficient. Yeah.
What a great way to use blood magic. It's like
I
normally
trained for years in sorcery.
normally
and
this is a
blood magic.
30-day filing process, but because I just
45.
sliced somebody open
45.
and then took their soul, 15 days.
Yeah.
I can get it done faster. It takes them twice as long.
Yeah. I had to tell people who were like, if you can ignore jam tech for your gun, why can't they? Well, rules are a funny thing, folks. Read the manual.
I mean, that's just a certain level of like, yeah, you just have to know that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the Sanctum and I can't have Weaver Affinity. Like, there's a lot of people that can't have Weaver Affinity. It could be a fetish with insulated. That's true.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
It would be interesting if somebody actually made a cell phone fetish just because they wanted it insulated just so they could escape. And honestly, if they do that level of footwork, they earned it.
Well, you would imagine a lot of these guys probably have subdermal transmitters and such like that.
Technology. They can have cranial bombs, but they can't have that because there's no rules for them.
Fucking cranial bombs. Love me some cranial bombs. Does the current campaign have a defined length? What we have publicly said about that is you should expect a 3-year chronicle.
Yeah? I thought it was 4.
No, 3. I mean, It may be longer. It may be shorter if you really fuck up. But I think you guys should be planning based on the idea that it's a 3-year chronicle, which puts us about a quarter of the way through. Something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I guess I knew there was an option on an extra year.
All I can say officially is that you should plan for it to be a 3-year chronicle, and there may be some flex on that.
Right. It also depends on. It depends on. I'm not in his chair. I don't know the things he knows, but just from being able to see, there's sort of the writing on the wall. Not even his. I'm not talking about looking over his shoulder and reading email. I mean, just like knowing how this company org structure works. There's so many moving parts. If certain things come into alignment, they're going to want to not extend a chronicle. Or, alternatively, if things don't roll out as they should, there might be an option on a longer chronicle.
One thing, and this is something we saw at the end of every chronicle, is that once people know the exact end date, the chronicle is dead. The moment we announced that the last chronicle was over, and the Vampire had the same problem for almost a year.
Oh, everyone checked out.
Everyone checks out. The moment you start announcing that you're working on a new chronicle.
Yeah, you have the few dozen players who feel like they matter and are like super invested, and they're all about it. And everybody who isn't at that point, especially people who didn't join the chronicle on 0 day, are just like, I'll do something else in my weekend. I'll play a different genre. I'll fuck around with a chord or space or whatever. You'd see space enrollment just jump.
If I had my druthers, I would let no one know we were deving New Chronicle until like right before it launched, like maybe 2 months warning. Like I wouldn't announce in an ideal world, imagining in a world where I can make these calls, which I can't.
Oh, it is a minimum length question.
Yeah,
it's at least 3 years.
It's at least 3 years unless you guys destroy the world.
Right. As long as there's player agency, there has to be the option on it ending early. Otherwise, we're telling you
you cannot fail.
Right. You can't. No, you can't fail and you can't succeed simultaneously because basically your actions can't matter.
Yeah.
And that's, I think philosophically, me and Brian are on the same page. That is anathema to our idea of storytelling.
Yeah. I'm not sure what you're saying about a survey about which we picked ending it early.
Oh, you mean Last Chronicle?
Yeah, that was Last Chronicle. Yeah, Last Chronicle. I don't understand your question.
Some people voted to end it early because, and it wasn't that it was ended early for any specific reason other than they didn't feel like they needed a last convention. I thought was the load bearing thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about Last Chronicle and how Last Chronicle ended. All I'm saying about Last Chronicle is that once it was announced the Last Chronicle was ending, there was a huge drop off in interest, which is what happens in every Chronicle. Vampire had the same problem. It's the same in every game. Whenever you announce an ending, people start checking out.
Yeah.
I don't think that's anything
for a lot of reasons. For a lot of people, it's also to protect themselves emotionally. It's something of a coping mechanism. It's like, well, if I really get emotionally invested in this, I know it's going to end in a year. Then I check out. I've been doing a fair amount of talking about Diablo 3 with various people, and I've been getting a lot of Blizzard IDs for, especially new seasons coming up in November. The PTR sort of killed interest in this season because next season looks so bananas and awesome that the complaint about Season 11 was that it doesn't look like it's going to be nearly as much fun as Season 12. They're like, we're not going to get these patches, and a lot of people were like, oh, we're finally getting all the things we want in Season 12, so I guess I wait? Or I guess I can finish out the season? Like, I still enjoyed Season 11 for a lot of reasons. Even though things weren't balanced and there was a lot of flaws, it didn't really affect the microcosm. But I do understand that. So when you announce a Chronicle end date, a lot of people are going to be like, eh.
Especially when the new thing is going to be something shiny.
Right, I want to be hype about the next thing.
Yeah.
I think when they say when Changeling is going to come out, that's also going to be a pressure situation. Like if, depending on what date that lines up and when it can start and if it can catch up. And there's just, again, so many moving parts.
We could dead dog Last Chronicle. The fact that we had a different ANST every year, I think hurt us a lot. I think a lot of the rebuilding the game on the fly hurt us a lot. I mean, we can get into that, but I don't want to get into that. Let's jump back to the other question. What do you do if your VST is not good? I can't help you with that.
Help them?
Help them.
I mean, if we really want to go pie in the sky optimism, where gaming is a community and we all love each other, which, guys, I know we're not all besties, but I can confidently say that of the people watching, I like you guys. I do. When you need help or ask me questions, I try to be Johnny on the spot and have answers or at least advice, even if it's not good advice, or I just tell you I don't know what I'm talking about. If you're in a game and the VST is struggling, that can be really frustrating. Seeing that kind of weakness and generally the bad feelings that it starts to generate is bad for a domain, it's bad for a game. Helping them, like, even if you have a weak ST, but half of the people who show up to game are staff, maybe that's necessary. Maybe you need that many narrators and assistant VSTs. Maybe you can focus on smaller, more personal stories. Maybe you can have a Wraith game. It could be possible. I don't know if it's likely, but uses Gur voice. Oh, I can't do Gur's voice.
But yeah,
nobody sucks at Diablo compared. I'm not that good. It's not like I have some. I will say I have one trick. I play all of my computer games with a trackball. I want you to think about that, digest it, know that it's true. It doesn't matter if it's Overwatch, any game that I'm ranked in, whether it's a shooter or an RTS or an action RPG, I'm playing it with a trackball, like CAD cam trackball.
What I will say about the Weaver thing is that we are running the Chronicle in the book. Chronicle in the book is laser focused on the Worm as an antagonist. We intend to honor that. The Worm is the antagonist in this Chronicle.
It's not going to be the Weaver.
We're not going down that road where the Weaver is the real bad guy. You can take that as an assurance that is not happening. The Worm is the antagonist. We are going to focus on the Worm as an antagonist. As for seeing this Chronicle through, that's not up to me. But insofar as I have an opinion on the subject, I intend to stay ANST Apocalypse until dev for ANST until Changeling starts. I very much would like to be involved with Changeling when it starts up, but that's pie in the sky. We're talking.
Is there a way to fix the try it, or will we have to all die at the end of Chron? I don't think. I mean, there's no real answer to stuff like that.
No. Well,
you guys could win. You can come up with something novel that could win. I mean, this was.
Well, a lot of that is defining what winning means.
Right.
Winning is mean everyone doesn't die.
Right. If you make it past an apocalypse scenario, you start gaining ground, and it looks like the future may have hope. That could be the ending roll credits.
Yeah.
That could be enough.
I mean, I have a variety of ideas for how the Chronicle could end based on how the clock is doing, what players are doing, things like that. I will say almost none of those endings involve one big proxy where everybody dies. I think there is a role for that in certain endgame scenarios, but I'm not by no means am I saying that is the only end scenario. Any way we end this Chronicle, I would want it to be in keeping with the theme of this Chronicle, which is that actions in your local games are why the world stands or falls. And I would want to honor that in any endgame scenario.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I mean, Rock's Fall, everybody dies is not a really satisfactory ending to
It
anybody.
is, I mean,
it can happen.
it has
You
to
can
be
burn the world to a cinder. You can make all the decisions to hasten the end of the world. That's part of player agency.
You can make that Mass Effect 2 run where everybody dies and it's just Shepard standing in an empty ship at the end of it. I mean,
It's just like
pretty one for me.
It's just me. I got them all. I mean, you could do the Fallout playthrough where you're just like, unless the game stops me from killing this character, I'm gonna kill this character. Just wipe out all life in that world.
Yeah.
Damn you, Candletown, or whatever the hell it was.
I mean,
Lamplight.
Yeah. And a lot of and we didn't get this as much as we wanted last time, but it's the only real point of comparison. Is that the goal is to get to the ending that you earn. It shouldn't be arbitrarily decided by the STs. There should be metrics in place, and we should react to what you're doing, and the ending should flow naturally from the middle.
Right, and this is also because I mean we're talking about the story behind the those rocks. When a lot of people, this is a conversation I know I've had with at least a couple of the people who are commenting. Combat and the mechanics and the stuff that a lot of people find either enchanting or disillusioning can't exist in a vacuum. All stakes in this game are set by story and role-playing and all of that stuff, which is infinitely more undefinable. And, I mean, also, there's a difficulty there because it's hard to put your finger on what actions really mattered. But that sets the stakes for combat. I mean, otherwise you could just be playing bridge. Because that's a deeply mechanical game. There's a lot of rules, and you can have a lot of fun playing it with a bunch of people. If you have 4, 8, 12, 16, you can start playing duplicate contract bridge tournaments.
Oh, stakes are so high.
Which, I mean, it's crazy fun. But, you know, that said, that's not a role-playing game. So that's...
In general rules, is Pentex or a shell company in every city? Yeah. I mean,
Pentex or a shell company is in every town in the United States.
Yes. Take that as a given.
They're ubiquitous.
They have a burger chain.
They are Stuffer Shack and Shadowrun, who is also as technology because they own Stuffer Shack.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
take the biggest big name companies you can think of in a given city, and just assume that they are Pentex. McDonald's, your Best Buy,
all of them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Do you have a
Apple
Xerox
stores.
there?
Yeah.
It's owned by Pentex. Do you have a paper mill there? It's owned by Pentex. Do you have a mine? It's owned by Pentex. Like,
Now, not everything is owned. Not everything is owned by Pentex. They don't own everything, but they do own a little bit. Of
right,
everything.
and any individual store or even whole corporation might not be staffed by Fomori.
Yeah, the moment Pentex buys a majority share in your company,
Right, everybody doesn't
does not
spout like tentacles. Like, they're just... Now they're a tool of the bad guys, which also puts, you know, the good guys in morally ambiguous situations where they might have to MDK a whole bunch of people who really haven't done anything wrong. They're doing the same 40-hour-a-week job they've been doing for 20 years.
I think one thing that's often overlooked is something between 99 and 99.99% of employees of Pentex are not Fomori or Supernaturals or evil. Most of them are just people.
Average people doing 40 hours a week. Yeah. We tried to reflect this in a number of plot lines and plot kits of like the type of memos they receive. They're like, we don't know why corporate's ordering this. This doesn't make sense to us as humans, as employees, as corporate officers, as management, or even as workers. But we're being told if we don't do it, we're going to get fired. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do it.
Yeah. Ravnos, I'm not going to answer that. Where you want to push your story and other players' stories is where you want to push it. You have an open sandbox. If you want to try to devote yourself to repairing the worm, I personally think it's a little late for that.
I don't know if it's late for that.
I mean, what I mean by that
we got 3/4 of the game left.
No. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. What I mean is that the world is so dead. The world is so fucked in BNS Apocalypse. Even worse than in Revised. Because in Revised, the world was hanging on. In BNS Apocalypse, the world is not hanging on. The world is...
It's in palliative care territory.
Yes.
It's in hospice. It does not look good.
No.
Like, the bad guys lost profoundly.
The good guys lost.
I'm sorry. The good guys lost so profoundly that their major victory is that they weren't exterminated. Mm-hmm. Not that they won in any real or meaningful sense, but they came up with basically a bootstrappy hack to stay in existence. Mm-hmm. That's it. That was their great victory. Mm-hmm. They held on a bit. Everybody else lost.
Mm-hmm. I mean, from one perspective, all of the events of BNS Apocalypse could be described as the worm decided it was time to win. The worm tried to win. The worm hit the Geru with everything it had. The Geru
That
lost
mostly
and
worked.
mostly lost. The Geru somehow survived. Team Worm stepped back to take a breather. The Geru declared that they had won. At some point, the worm is going to be ready to make a movement to just exterminate you. That is something that's going to happen. But right now, the worm is not... When I speak of the worm, I mean the various factions of the worm. I'm not speaking of a guy called Mr. Worm. At some point, the worm will be organized enough again to exterminate all of you. It's not there yet. I would be focused on the answering that question of why hasn't the worm killed all of us yet?
There are very good answers to those questions that I think players haven't really looked into. Like why is the finishing blow never fallen?
Right. Yeah, the Geru are at a standing 8 count. They're wobbling. All the worm has to do is just deliver a right hook, and it's over.
I mean, they're historical comparisons. I think one of the best ones is the
Mexican-American War.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with there was this weird confluence of events where Mexico had superior technology because they were using the first really fully operational deployed Gatling guns. And I mean, almost automatic weapons, basically, in a war. And they could have done really well. And then it became way more important to various Mexican generals of who is going to be in charge of Mexico after their obvious victory against this new young American country. And then they lost the Mexican-American War. There was a time there they had a shot. I mean, the reason we say remember the Alamo isn't because America was so winning. That's not why that became a battle cry. It's because they lost so profoundly, so many battles. But yeah, they felt infighting, and there's a lot of that in a lot of that. Well, it's not 1-to-1, obviously, but there's a lot of unexplored what's going on with the worm that I haven't seen a lot of players move in that direction. But
I mean, the best analogy in a lot of ways is all right. I don't know if this is gonna go over like a brick with this crowd. I don't know you people, but it's really in the Silmarillion. Like the elves, Morgoth has whooped the elves' ass. Doriath has fallen, Nargothrond has fallen, and yet there are still elves around, and there's still hold up. Gondolin hasn't fallen yet.
Oh, yours may have been skipped. The faster the questions scroll, the less we can see them. We only see 5 posts at a time, basically.
But basically,
because I can't read.
If I was putting this,
scroll
one second.
Yeah.
I'm going to rant.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're going with the token, if you go into the token analogy, the Battle of Sudden Flame has happened. The elf kingdoms have essentially been demolished. However, Gondolin still stands, and there is still a fight left to be fought. But Morgoth has not yet struck the final blow. Yeah, with Sudden Flame, I'm thinking more of Sudden Flame because at a numbered no, you're right. No, Sudden Flames was Barahir. You're right. Unnumbered Tears. Unnumbered Tears has happened, but the elves have not yet been exterminated. And I think that is the moment we are at. Why hasn't Morgoth destroyed everything? What does Morgoth want? It's a great question. Okay.
Looks like I was just wondering if it was skipped. Probably was. We'll scroll up real quick
this is
before.
It. No, wait. Whose question? Do you think the reason why the Garo players are so quiet is because they know the game is supposed to be Garo-centric? They don't feel they may have to compete, while fair and players think it's not, and therefore create their own stories and sandbox events? I think it's possible. I don't want to try to guess. I try to deal with observational facts.
I don't know. This is things that, from my point of view, because again, I don't wear official hats. I'm not in official emails. I'm not in these Facebook closed groups or anything like that. I don't see any of that at like any of the games I'm going to. But I hear that it's true, and it's not like I question the veracity of those people. But I can't even speak to what's going on in the heads of the players in your game. I can barely speak to what's going on in the heads of the players in the games that I'm actually at. So that's where I am.
Only in this chronicle there will be no War of Wrath. Yes, no one's coming from outside to save you. So that is the question. Since Valinor is not going to open up its hosts and overrun Morgoth, what the hell is Galadriel and company going to do? It's a great question. Would you ever consider playing one of the other settings aspects in the book, such as the Hadi Alliance setting for a different approach? In a different chronicle, maybe. Not in this one. We're not in Africa.
Yeah, that's the other problem with a lot of that stuff is, like, I would love if there was
I mean, Emerald Court would be the one that, like, if I could run any chronicle, I would love to run a Beast Courts chronicle. Because the Beast Courts is so cool, and they're not what a lot of people think they are, and they're the celestial bureaucracy, and they are not fucking around, and they are the largest group of shifters in the world, and they are basically functional. And they have a very cool narrative going on off screen, which we're never going to talk about. And
Yeah.
I think that would be a story I would like to tell. But that is not the story we're going to tell this time.
I think what's also important is I would like there to be actual games. I mean, no, I'm being serious. If there was, there's no reason other than, like, that it's not marketed there, that there isn't, like, a BN or an MES Lagos game. I mean, we could have it.
Mm-hmm.
They could have live sessions. There could be games in Lagos and Nairobi. There could be games all over Africa. I mean, like, there's not to. There are cities there where there are more cell phones than people. There's, like, there can be games there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want. It feels weird pretending to be those peoples and places when they could just have those games.
Right.
And I think if we want in a hottie game, then we should just market MES products better abroad.
Well, again, because, I mean...
Again, right. You know, it's... I would think that would be amazing. Mm-hmm. That would be great.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't want it here. I wouldn't want to live in Buffalo, drive to a gaming site in Buffalo, and play
Nairobi
Cairo by night,
yeah.
like, or wherever. Like, that's none of that feels right to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or Wales by night. I mean, we've got the Brits, we've got the Canadians. I mean, like, if we want South Americans, we should get South Americans on board.
God knows the Brazilians love LARPing.
Right. So, I mean, we should get whoever we can get, and that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yes, White Wolf, shitty representation. We all know that. I don't want to downplay that, but that is an argument discussion we've had many times, and you can go back to. I don't feel like going down that road again.
Yeah,
we have a Wales game. We just said that. We love Wales.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have the Brits, we have the Canadians. Like, it would be not. If there weren't actual anybody in England playing, then I would definitely not. I would feel the same way. Mm-hmm. It's not because it's specifically not Africa or not Asia. It could also be not England or not France. Like, I wouldn't want a game set in Paris. I think that if we want a game set in Paris, we should talk to Parisian LARPers.
But I mean, this is all hypotheticals and, you know, talking about things that aren't happening, which I don't know if it's helpful to focus on. Okay, we've been going for 147. I think we've had a very engaging conversation. Any other questions?
I mean, what else?
Just fire away, folks. There's a whole bunch of you here. Yeah, alternate locations are great for tabletop. By night books are a lot of fun.
Oh, no. That's fine. But I'm talking about as a network game in an org. Mm-hmm. If you want those networked places generally, like, I understand why we use the Caribbean for virtual. Like, I get that. But I would like to use whatever we can get, wherever we can get it, where there's players.
I had to grab food. Did the question about right of acceptance get answered? Yeah, I was dodgy and kind of an asshole about it. But the short version is that the right of acceptance doesn't need to be fixed. SEPT laws need to be fixed.
Right. People can handle it at the SEPT level. Mm-hmm. Is anyone researching Karen plans?
Great
Probably.
question for your other players. Yeah.
Bringers of the Land, so on. Rocket the Galliard. I'm trying to think. We sort of talked about, I guess, we talked about agency and acceptance. Trying to think what else.
Daly is sassy. He survived Vancouver by night and he died in it. I mean, don't fuck with Roger Daly. He is a sassy old man. You know what? You know who Roger Daly is? He's Roger Sterling from Mad Men. Actually, 100%. Roger Daly in my head is Roger Sterling from Mad Men. Just straight up. Tony Stark's father, if you know Iron Man.
Yeah, he's good in things. Yeah. He's good in things.
How do you feel about infiltrating the Worm-style characters and the problems they bring? I think it's less a problem than the play. I think the problem is more on the player's side. That, much like infiltrating the Sabbat, very quickly you stop being an infiltrator
and end up being in the Sabbat.
Unless you're an Anansi.
No, or a Nuisha.
Or
Nuisha
if you're
make
an
perfect
yeah,
infiltrators.
if you're an Anansi or a Nuisha, that's a different discussion. For everybody else, if you're infiltrating the worm, you're going to be working for the worm very quickly.
Right. The only problem I have with those characters are the logistics issues. It's the same thing of like, well, for my concept, I basically need my own dedicated storyteller.
Yeah, for folks who want to change nationally, I really think you need to start locally. I mean, about right of acceptance.
If every local sept already has this rule and plays with it for a while, and that's been the law of the land for months, if not years, then getting it to pass nationally would be trivial.
But right now, as we said earlier, for those who weren't with us, asking the tribal council to agree on what to order for lunch seems problematic.
Yeah.
Thimgol, I don't know what that was, so I'm just, yeah. I got to sing or Sidhu Bahai at a game was killing. Okay.
Okay.
So it can be a sept law. Again, what does you can you do this about joining the nation? Like, what does that mean? It doesn't.
Just make your own sept rule. You can just make your own sept rule where
they are joining the nation, but joining the nation doesn't give you a social security number.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't. It's just a title. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it don't saying that someone is a member of the nation.
Right, and the rules that apply to them can all be done at the sept level.
Yeah, what it means for Farah to be members of the Geru Nation can be controlled at the sept level.
So,
No. No. Okay. Kronson of Kron says, "My game now is a Farah sept leader. Is the tribal council going to roll us?" There are sept leaders in the book that are Farah. And those are in septs that are controlled by, that have counselors in them. No, that's fine. They just don't get renowned. And as I said earlier, somewhat jokingly, Gaians seem to have survived for 25 years and revised with no mechanics behind renown. I think it's okay. Like,
well, and most of the Farah have their own way of ranking.
Yeah.
They don't need your renown mechanics.
Yeah.
Like, you might not get werewolf renown, but the renown you get for whatever you need to do your equivalent of ranking and rights is usually what you have.
Yeah. The right doesn't have anything to do with the renown for greater sept positions. That's true. On the other hand, it was... I don't want to get into that. There were no troubles. Everyone showed up. Tea was served. That sounds true.
We covered that almost episode 1. We're not talking about it. Not talking. My glib question at the time is, am I still even allowed to listen to the Cranberries? But you know what? Here's the thing. If you want to be mad at the British, there is such a long history there of things to be mad about. You can be mad about other
in
things.
BNS, you do need Geru renown because every so often the spirits don't grant renown. Yes, Farah tend to rank up more slowly. However, in a game where you were allowed to come in at whatever rank you wanted to be at,
yeah, that's
I'm not too. I mean, I understand there's a lot of player concern about this, and I hear that concern.
I've usually seen STs in the big scenes use renown in a way that they used to use, like, exceptional roleplay nods and things like that. If you did really cool stuff or were really clever and everybody was sort of applauding your actions, you will get the appropriate glory, honor, or wisdom.
Also, Farah in lesser sept positions can give renown just like anybody else. And there are plenty of lesser sept positions. Getting renown from a den mother shouldn't be that difficult. Lonesome downtimes. I mean, I'm not entirely sympathetic to the fair argument that they can't earn renown because they don't have greater sept positions. I do understand the argument. I'm just not sure if that dog hunts. I don't know.
Whatchamacallit? It's...
Does Farah, if alt IDs as Geru, get the position renown?
Referring to outside... Oh, you know... I feel like we're trending dangerously into navel-gazing territory. I would have to see operational examples of what is or isn't working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I act as den parent, but I'm not one.
Well, then you should be den parent.
Yeah, Fair can be dead parents.
Yeah, it's a lost or set position. They absolutely can.
I am lost on that now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I got nothing. Some things need specifics.
I can't. I'm not in the nation. Well, then you should join the nation.
Then you could just join the nation. And what that means is really up in the air. Again, because your sept can be like, yeah, you could do the rite of acceptance, and then you need to follow your own litany, and also either part or none or all of the Gera litany, and...
We aren't allowed to have a sept because it's too much work for the STs. Well, that's a local issue. I can't help you with that. There's nothing I can say about that. If that's the issue, as you represent it, I mean that's a local issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a really good response to that.
Yeah. The Grottos are a special case. I very much don't think the Rokea players want me discussing how the Grottos work on a live stream with everyone.
Grotto.
Grotto? Yeah.
What's grotto?
Grotto, whatever. What am I saying?
Grotto.
Grotto, that's how it's spelled. Grotto.
It doesn't matter. It's a grotto.
Who gives a crap? It's a grotto. The point is I don't know if you want me discussing how the grottos work on a live stream. We can talk about that off thread with the fair lead. But what's being done in those hypothetical septs that may or may not exist is decided by NPCs in septs that may or may not exist.
And we were discussing the Silmarillion a moment ago, so pronunciation is out the window.
Yeah. Any big plot stuff you worked on and got no progress? I see. Vague booking accepted. Honestly, since I don't think about plot like that, I don't have an answer, because the way I think about plot is you just keep throwing your fishing rod out, waiting for a bite.
I have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Yes. a profound yes.
Yeah.
And I can only say that because of the weird sort of just helper type of person I am, who helps write lots of background documents, NPC sheets, and stuff like that. I will say that probably, I'm being pretty liberal here, but 95% of what I work on, no one will ever care about. But on the off chance that the waveform collapses and somebody shines a light in a certain direction, there will be a background and a full sheet there for somebody to deal.
Okay.
And to have.
Rokea players, let's put a pin in this. Open an odd character thread on the Rokea list saying, hey guys, could you explain to me how the Grottos work mechanically? And then we can have that discussion there, away from prying eyes.
Yes, thank you. Best vague book ever. Yes. Yeah, no, but I mean, I think I unpacked that. And here's the weird thing. I am bizarrely comfortable with that. I feel zero frustration about that. I start at zero, and I only get joy when the stuff I write or work on ever matters.
Yeah. I mean, I've written 30-page plot kits that got burned by player action, and you know what? I sat in the car and I cursed about it, and then the next day I was fine about it, because that's the way it works. That is the job. And I think I think this is a great note to close on, is that all STs need to recognize that no matter how much work you put in, player action might cancel it out, and that is not only okay, that is the desired result.
And preferred, yeah.
Yeah, desired and preferred result.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think storytellers need to be flexible enough to set something aside if it's not working now and come back to it later. Plot hooks that don't work can lay the groundwork for even better
plot works that do work
later.
Yeah,
absolutely.
As an ST, well, as a VST, as a longtime other ST and DM and etc., I like baiting a tremendous number of hooks and just laying them all out there. What the players bite, they bite. That informs you as a storyteller of what they're interested in. That's generally what you develop. Some of those dangling plot hooks that go unbitten can be worked in really great as time bombs or threats later. And some of them you just have to drop. Doesn't matter how much work you put into them. It doesn't matter how much you care about them. If the players don't care, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's meaningless counting the heads on pins and all that.
Yeah. Yep. No, Iggy's fine.
Iggy's fine.
Iggy's fine.
Iggy's doing okay. Just not playing a lot of Werewolf.
Yeah, which is fine. He takes time away. He'll be back. He'll be refreshed. He'll be awesome.
Still doing tons of gaming.
Yeah. Other than that, thank you everybody for coming. We'll be back in 2 weeks, probably with a more structured episode. But I thought it would be really good to just clear the board with just some straight up Q&A and just talk to you guys.
I think now at this point that there's really no part of the book that we haven't discussed. I guess except for some of the more narrative things and systems.
Renown is the big thing. People want us to talk more about Renown.
Okay, so we can cover what's left.
Which is really Renown.
And then I think the format of the show shifts more into what you guys want to talk about and what we want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, the Chronicle is always going to be the core of this podcast. But I do think it'd be cool to leave some room to talk about other things. Just because it's fun to talk about other stuff.
Although not Cookie Clicker.
I think our Cookie Clicker podcast is possibly the best Cookie Clicker podcast
I'm gonna say
ever.
the best.
I'm gonna say we
best.
can retire undefeated from the world of Cookie Clicker podcasts.
Yes. Okay, so
yeah.
I think how long have we been going?
Well, 2 hours. We are good. We did our
2
job.
hours on the mark. All right. So it was wonderful talking with everybody. I hope you hit up the Facebook page. We will try to get more social media grip with talking about werewolves and give you guys more options for, I don't know, everybody has like on Facebook and check out our blog or hit up our Patreon. And while none of this is in any way supposed to like really benefit us, we have a long-standing agreement to just do what we can do to make the podcast better. At this point, we've got a decent camera and we got a really nice microphone. That's you folks are why we do this. I mean,
obviously.
Yeah. So the flip side of that is that your engagement and the direction you give us is also important. This is a whole community, but it's also not like an undauntingly large community. So I think everybody can get a word in. Special guest, we've been working on it again.
We'll get it at some point.
It's Sunday nights. It's, I don't want to say it's like a cursed night, but for a lot of the people that we want to get on the stream, it is like the worst. So we may have episodes that aren't on a Sunday night, maybe.
I also do kind of love the idea of Tristan and Jamie just hosting at some point with no explanation. Just Tristan and Jamie are there instead of us and just going with it. I think that's just hilarious.
We should and will look into getting people to telecommunicate in to be another like face bubble in our stream. I've seen a lot of that in YouTube live streams, and I know it's possible to do on Twitch as well, because I see gaming groups do it, and it would be neat because we don't have to physically get them over to this table.
Oh, back on the couches, that is going back away. Whew, that was like the first two
lost
episodes. Hashtag back on the couches.
Yeah, we weren't even all in frame. Some of us were off to the side.
We didn't have we were using a webcam mic. Oh my god. Either way, I'll see you guys on Facebook. We'll be around. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And until then, good hunting.
Yep. Be well, guys.